age of salary administration and industrial relations. Beyond that, so far as training is concerned, competency building is concerned, core competence and all those terms they are not familiar with. So the biggest challenge for me in such an organization is to first create an awareness of the HR, that what HR is all about and why HR is important. Today the organizations all over the country and all over the world, those who have a very, very strong HR structure are the ones who are leading in whatever way. And those who have ignored HR are left way behind. So this is a thought that is to be inculcated in the minds of the people. Now talking about talent is a very, very major issue. Because first of all, we want to know what talent is. And who is the one who is talented and who is recognized as a potential talent. Unless we know and we understand the meaning of talent, what are we going to do with the talent? Because if someone came to me and said, sir, this is a person who has scored a triple century in one of the state level games and he is one of the employees, can we do something about him? So normally the tradition and touch is that we'll just say, ki, no, sports is not our cup of tea. We are in the business of power generation. So what is he going and how is he going to help us, help the organization? So basically it is the mindset of the people to look at talent, whether this talent is relevant to the needs of the organization or not. Because to me, in the power sector, I started when I joined NTPC. And I was told that the power is generated where the head is, I mean pit head. The pit head used to indicate the positions or the locations of those power projects where the coal was there in abundance. And they were all very, very remote locations. A lot of my colleagues are sitting here, under whom I have worked, Chaturvedi sahab, Vindhyachal mein sir. So there were so many locations which were very far away. I got the intimation at Vindhyachal that my father is admitted through wireless message. And when I reached him, he had already expired. So those were the situations wherein the people in the power sector had worked for ages. So according to me, the one who is available there is the most talented. The person who has spent 20-30 years, Sanjeev Sood, at Nathpa Jakri Power Project, a Jakri project which is very, very remote. Today he is the general manager. I have seen him 25 years ago and all his life he has lived at Jakri and today he is associated with each and every activity of the corporation. Today it is doing very well, the #1 hydropower project in the country. So the commitment of the people towards the organization is the first thing that I consider as a talent, especially in the power sector. Maybe in IT it is not, because everybody is sitting in a very cozy room where location doesn't matter. So first of all, we have to identify what kind of talent we are looking for and what identifies a talent. Recently, one more thing happened in my organization. The Chief Minister was the main guest and it was a very big program and we were looking for an anchor. In Delhi, you got such beautiful anchors. In Dehradun, we were finding it very difficult. We called some outsider, somebody for that program and just took a test and we found that she just could not deliver because she didn't know the organization. And a person did not know the organization, did not know who the people are, what they are doing. So how do we communicate? So ultimately we decided that one engineer, Rekha Dangwal, we said, your Hindi is good, can you do? She said, why not? And when she did that anchoring, the CM was so impressed that he stood up and who is this engineer? I want to personally congratulate her. So these are the things that an HR people are required to look into the people. The first thing for the HR people is to look into to know their people, what their competencies are, what all they can do for the organization. It is not only the engineering part, it is the people's part. Just now, Asha Bhandarkar ji told about emotional intelligence. She talked about spirituality in the organizations. These things have become very, very important today because only IQ is not going to help. In one of the studies in Harvard, it was proved that if you have to be successful, then IQ plays only 25% role and EQ plays 75%. We have to understand people, and unless we understand our people, understand our, their competencies, their talents, we will not succeed as an organization. So for me, when we are talking about the talent, the first thing is the identification of talent. When it comes to nurturing, if I am able to identify the people who are truly there for the organization, then my job becomes simple. My job becomes simple once I have identified the people that they are the ones who are going to contribute in the well-being, development, growth of the organization. The second part becomes the training. Let me tell you, dear friends, that so far as the training modules of our PSUs are concerned, we are not specific, we are very, very general. उस प्रोग्राम में भेज दो, इसको वहाँ अटेंड करा लो. But have we ever identified the training need of individuals? केवल कोचिंग में होता है कि तेंदुलकर को फलाने कोच के अंडर में ट्रेनिंग चाहिए. Only in the sports we identify coaches because they are the ones who can pinpoint the shortcomings in the players. But so far as employees are concerned, no such thing is done. I am not aware of. Because unless, if I am able to identify that these are the potential talents in the organization, I should know what their individual requirements are. If I have to take out the best from them, I should know what do they need. What are those inputs that are required for the improvement in them, for the betterment of them. So such kind of individually tailored programs are required for people today if the organizations want to excel. So again is the question of the transformation, talent transformation. The transformation is then when the individual talent is in sync with the organization vision, mission and goals. If I am able to identify that these are the capabilities and competencies that I do possess, but unless they are in sync with the organization goals, I will not be able to give my best. So under this context, these are my point of views, and I think we shall carry it forward during the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi, for sharing your perspective. The next speaker is an HR leader who has recently moved from the national carrier to one of the largest hydro power generation utility in the state sector. So I would request and invite Mr. Nikhil Jain for sharing his perspective.
Good afternoon. It's a matter of honor to be with such a distinguished panel and such a distinguished audience. People join a job, they stay in a job for a variety of factors. Salary, job security, job content, the image of the organization, possibly a boss, working conditions, career development, maybe the desires of a spouse. They also determine whether you will stay or move to another job. A place of posting. Now all these are very important points, but they keep on changing with time. For a person who's joining it afresh, maybe the requirement is different. For a person at different stages of life, a person who is whose children are grown up, he wants an education, maybe the requirements for staying in a job would be different. Person about 50, maybe the requirements would change. Of course, we all know that salary is not the only element. I'm sure you must have heard about the recent news which came up that people in Google who were associated with the smart card project, they left because they were very comfortable. They got so much of money, they didn't need to work. So even salary as such is not the defining factor. There are many defining factors for attracting people, for keeping them. These factors which attract people, which keep them, which prevent them from leaving to other places are also industry specific. Now if you take a particular thing on the power sector, say the hydropower sector, I'm sure you're aware that the power sector is coming under a lot of pressure in the sense that though they are producing electricity, the costs have come down and the states are not willing to buy it. So there is this need to cut down costs. Now as far as NHPC is concerned, when you make a project, the number of people needed are much higher. But during the operation phase, the need comes down. Then there is another scenario which is developing that most of these organizations have been giving. They have been taking projects on a turnkey basis or a package basis. There is a shortage of committed or good contractors, and there have been cost overruns on those contracts. So the need is again being felt that you take people in the organization who will be doing that work rather than outsourcing it. So you mean, the early cycle which was there, that you outsource to a company and then you let them do the work which reduce the manpower requirement, which reduce the costs, that is also changing. Now coupled with this and the fact that there is a need to reduce costs, there is a need to develop models which are different from the current ones. In the hydropower sector, as Mr. Joshi said, for NTPC, the most difficult part is the places where you work. Like there is a hydropower project in Gurez, where the temperature is -30. The places are inaccessible, they are temperature-wise they are difficult, and they're all areas of militancy. So people are not willing to go there. So in that scenario, how do you get people to yourself? How do you keep them? And how do you train them? I mean, it is my viewpoint that people stay in the talent, as you identified, stays in the organization for 3 or 4 reasons. Firstly, what they believe is that whether there is fairness in the HR practices and policies, especially regarding promotion. Secondly, do they have faith in the management? Thirdly, do they have a well-defined career path? And fourthly, and one very important thing which I am realizing, is that whether they have an aptitude or an interest in the job which they are doing. So what I feel is one of the basic things now that we have to change, we will, and I will try and do that, at least in my organization, the way of induction, that is not merely somewhere when the basic domain knowledge is available, recruit people on the basis of aptitude and skill. Secondly, catch them young. Go to universities, go to academia, get them for internship programs in the organization so they see the difficult part and they're willing to come and stay with the organization. Third, I would also say that there has to be an element of cross-pollination, people moving across organizations, taking new ideas and best practices. And of course, this career development, this succession planning is very important. That not only keeps people within the organization, it also provides the necessary amount of skills to meet with the growing, changing needs. I think many of our PSUs have great opportunity that way because we are all having a very aging population, workforce. Like in NHPC, almost about, out of strength of about 8,000 people, almost about 550 are retiring every year. And out of the 550, about 100 odd, about 20-25% are from the executive cadre who are the most trained manpower. Secondly, the average age is also high. It's about 48 here. So while that being an issue, it also gives an opportunity that while doing new engagements, we can take people, the type of people whom we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Now I would request Mr. Nikhil Shahane. He represents an organization which is a world leader in project management, engineering and construction for energy industry, from deepest subsea oil and gas developments to the largest and most complex offshore and onshore infrastructure. They also happen to be the consecutive recognition holder for top employers. So, Mr. Nikhil Chane for sharing his perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, and good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists. It has been a very exciting event in the morning with the chief managing directors giving the business landscape. I think it's very worrying for me because I'll speak more from a conventional energy point of view. We are into oil and gas, the traditional energy sector. And I've been away from India for 13 years, recently came back. And to me, even in India, we do not have enough talent to execute conventional energy projects to the extent that the West is doing. And there's a big talent gap. So to me, it further, aggravates the problem that we are now looking at unconventional sources of energy and talking about how we'll transform talent and help get unconventional energy. So that's really very worrying. But one of the points that I picked up in the morning was somebody said, I think Mr. Sopti said that it's good to go unconventional, but when you go unconventional, remember, don't forget convention. And this is very important for HR because no matter to me what has happened in the last decade, the fundamentals of HR remain the same. And many a times we make mistakes in the fundamentals, talking about big things. So I think I'll speak a little bit about what I think we are planning to do as an organization to transform HR, but the fundamental has to be the same. Good people practices, the age-old people practices of personnel management, patting people on the back, that's not going to go out of the window. So coming back to how we are going to transform the talent, I mean, the biggest challenge for oil and gas and even unconventional energy sector is knowledge transfer. Some of you have already spoken. We have an aging population. All our experts, people who have executed large projects, globally EPC projects, they're all retiring or already retired and they're still working. And there's a very, very big gap between them and the fresh graduates that we have started hiring since the last 4 or 5 years. So how we are going to get this knowledge transferred to the younger population from the baby boomers and Gen X to the Gen Y and millennials, that's the biggest challenge for every HR professional, I think, especially in the energy sector. And how we are going to manage this knowledge transfer? I think the key is technology. Because when I say HR fundamentals remain the same, what has changed is technology. And I think we as organizations have to be on top of the technology. Today, if we are trying to recruit fresh engineers from the NITs or IITs, it is important that we attract them to the energy sector. And again, in the morning, we also heard, people want to join the Googles and Apples and all the fancy names. Nobody knows about us. So what are we doing about it? If we have to attract the right talent, we need to be good with technology. We need to reach out to them. Some of the things that we started doing is socio-recruitment, socio-advocacy, which is basically, taking the power of LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and these social media sites and trying to create a brand name for the company. There are various companies, even LinkedIn has an app that helps you connect to your people through your employees. So we have done a lot on the socio-advocacy side, trying to increase the employer brand amongst the market. That's one. The second thing we need to do is obviously fast track individual. Because oil and gas and power, I think we are very orthodox industries. And we also take a lot of pride in being orthodox. There's no harm in that. But I think the younger generation that we are hiring, and I think Jayant also said that we need to fast track them. And we are taking a lot of initiatives to take risks. We have to ask ourselves a question, do we have budgets for innovation and risk? I mean, it starts at the bidding process of a project. How much do we have provision for innovation? Because if I'm taking a person and if I wait 15 years for this person to manage a project, I'll be dead, I have to throw people at the deep end, and we have to get people to think differently. So thinking differently and diversity in thinking is the second biggest challenge when we talk about transformation. We were recently in a session on succession planning with some of our senior leaders, and we were talking about succession plan. Who's your successor now? Who's your successor in 3 years? And who your successor in 15 years? Yes, 15 years. And it's very easy for people to say, if I'm an engineering head, my successor is the guy sitting in mechanical engineering, his successor is another guy sitting under him, and his or her successor is another 10-year junior sitting in the mechanical department. Why? We have to challenge this in our energy sector. We need to look at moving people across functions, a guy in procurement could probably move into estimation and things like that. So this cross-functional mindset has to come up big time in the energy sector, and we have to inculcate people, we have to train the younger generation, but we also have to train the managers. Because what also happens is we train the younger generation in being assertive and being challenging their managers, but when they challenge their managers, you all know what happens, you know. So if you're going to challenge your manager, you're never going to be rated as a good leader. So that's a big worry. So I think that's something that needs to be done. And last but not the least, one of the important things that's happening within the private sector and international operators is we are looking at international mobility. Because we need to mobilize people. We talked about remote sites. I think that has been there even 20 years back. But today, we are sending people on remote sites, international locations, on challenging assignments, because this is going to accelerate the knowledge transfer. If we keep people here, and if people are not ready to experiment, I think we will not take the same pace as the industry expects us to be. So basically, to me, as I mentioned, knowledge transfer, technology,